We received a lot of questions online, Mr. Trump, about the tape that was released on Friday. As you can imagine, you called what you said locker room banter. You described kissing women without consent, grabbing their genitals. That is sexual assault. You bragged that you have sexually assaulted women. Do you understand that?
No, I didn't say that at all.
And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the...
I don't think you understood what was said. This was locker room talk. I will take care of ISIS.
So, Mr.
And
Trump,
we should get on to much more important things and much bigger things.
just for the record, though, are you saying that what you said on that bus 11 years ago, that you did not actually kiss women without consent or grope women without consent?
I have great respect for women. Nobody has more respect for women than I do.
So for the record, you're saying you never did that?
I said things that, frankly, you hear these things are said. And I was embarrassed by it, but I have tremendous respect for women.
Have you ever done those
women
things?
Have respect for me. And I will tell you, no, I have not.
And he has said that the video doesn't represent who he is. But I think it's clear to anyone who heard it that it represents exactly who he is.
And we want to get to some questions
Well, am I
from
allowed to
online.
respond to that? I assume I am.
Yes, you can respond to that.
It's just words, folks. It's just words. When Hillary brings up a point like that, and she talks about words that I said 11 years ago, I think it's disgraceful, and I think she should be ashamed of herself, if you want to know the truth.
Well, first, let me start by saying that so much of what he's just said is not right, but he gets to run his campaign any way he chooses. He gets to decide what he wants to talk about. Instead of answering people's questions, talking about our agenda, laying out the plans that we have that we think can make a better life and a better country, that's his choice. When I hear something like that, I am reminded of what my friend Michelle Obama advised us all. When they go low, you go high. And he needs to take responsibility for his actions and his words.
Because Bernie Sanders, between superdelegates and Deborah Wasserman Schultz, he never had a chance. And I was so surprised to see him sign on with the devil. But if I win, I am going to instruct my Attorney General to get a special prosecutor to look into your situation. And honestly, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Secretary Clinton.
It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Please allow her to respond. She didn't talk while you talked.
Yes, that's true. I didn't. And
you
I
have
didn't
nothing
in
to
the
say.
first debate, and I'm going to try not to in this debate because I'd like to get to the questions that the people have brought here tonight to talk to us about.
And get off this question.
Okay, Donald, I know you're into big diversion tonight, anything to avoid talking about your campaign and the way it's exploding and the way Republicans are leaving you. But
Let's
at
see what
least
happens.
focus
Allow her to
on some of
respond.
the
Let's see what
issues
happens.
to avoid talking about your campaign and the way it's exploding and the way Republicans are leaving you. But let's at
see what
least
happens.
focus
Allow her
on
to
some of
respond.
the
Let's see what
issues
happens.
that people care about tonight. Let's get to their questions.
We have a question here from Ken Karpowitz. He has a question about health care. Ken?
I'd like to know, Anderson, why aren't you bringing up the emails? I'd like to know. Why aren't you
We
getting
brought up
to
the
bottom?
emails.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't. And it hasn't been finished at all.
Ken Karpowitz has a question.
It's nice to 1-on-3.
What will you do to bring the costs down and make coverage better?
That first one goes to Secretary
Thank
Clinton
you.
because you started out the last one to the audience.
If he wants to start, he can start.
This-
No, go ahead, Donald.
No, I'm a gentleman, Hillary. Go ahead.
Secretary Clinton?
Mr. Trump, in December, you said this. Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. We have no choice. We have no choice. Your running mate said this week that the Muslim ban is no longer your position. Is that correct? And if it is, was it a mistake to have a religious test?
The Muslim ban is something that, in some form, has morphed into a extreme vetting from certain areas of the world. Hillary Clinton wants to allow.
And
Hundreds
why
of
did it
thousands.
morph
Excuse
into that?
me,
No,
excuse
did
me.
you? No, answer the question.
Why
Do
don't
you
you
still
interrupt
believe?
her? You
I
interrupt
do.
me all the time. Why don't you
Would you
interrupt her?
please explain whether or not the Muslim ban still stands?
It's called extreme vetting.
And indeed, you can look at the propaganda on a lot of the terrorist sites And what Donald Trump says about Muslims is used to recruit fighters because they want to create a war between us. And the final thing I would say, this is the 10th or 12th time that he's denied being for the war in Iraq. We have it on tape. The entire press corps has looked at it. It's been debunked, but it never stops him from saying whatever he wants to say.
Has not been debunked.
Are you for invading Iraq?
Yeah, I guess so. I wish it was. I wish the first time it was done correctly.
So please
Has not been debunked. And
go
I
to
was against,
HillaryClinton.com and you can see it.
I was against the war in Iraq. Has not been debunked.
The New York Times published 3 pages of your 1995 tax returns. They show you claimed a $916 million loss, which means you could have avoided paying personal federal income taxes for years. You've said you pay state taxes, employee taxes, real estate taxes, property taxes. You have not answered, though, a simple question. Did you use that $916 million loss to avoid paying personal federal income taxes for years?
Of course I do. Of course I do.
Can you say how many years you have avoided paying personal federal income taxes?
No, but I pay tax and I pay federal tax too. But I have a write-off. A lot of it's depreciation, which is a wonderful charge. I love depreciation. She's given it to us. Hey, if she had a problem, for 30 years she's been doing this, Anderson. I say it all the time. She talks about health care. Why didn't she do something about it? She talks about taxes. Why didn't she do something about it?
Well, here we go again. I've been in favor of getting rid of carried interest for years, starting when I was a senator from New York. But that's not the point here.
Why didn't you do it? Why didn't you do it?
Allow her to respond.
Because I was a senator with a Republican president.
Oh, really?
I will be the
you
president.
You could have done it if you were an effective. If you were an effective senator, you could have done it. If you were an effective senator, you could have done it. But you were not an effective.
Please allow her to
senator.
respond. She didn't interrupt you.
Under our Constitution, presidents have something called veto power. Look, he has now said repeatedly, 30 years this and 30 years that. So let me talk about my 30 years in public service. I'm very glad to do so. 8 million kids every year have health insurance because when I was First Lady, I worked with Democrats and Republicans to create the Children's Health Insurance Program. Hundreds of thousands of kids now have a chance to be adopted because I worked to change our adoption and foster care system. After 9/11, I went to work with Republican mayor, governor, and president to rebuild New York and to get health care for our first responders who were suffering because they had run toward danger and gotten sickened by it. 400 pieces of legislation have my name on it as a sponsor or co-sponsor when I was a senator for 8 years. I worked very hard and was very proud to be reelected in New York by an even bigger margin than I had been elected the first time. And as president, I will take that work, that bipartisan work, that finding common ground, because you have to be able to get along with people to get things done in Washington.
Thank you, Secretary.
And I've proven that I can. And for 30 years, I've produced results for people.
Thank you, Secretary.
We're going to move on to Syria. Both of you have mentioned that.
She said a lot of things.
I
think we should
we can,
be allowed
no,
to maybe
Mr. Trump, we're going to
dispute
go
it,
on. This
because
is
she has
about
been
the
a
audience.
disaster as a senator.
Mr. Trump,
A
we're
disaster.
going to move on.
But I want to emphasize that what is at stake here is the ambitions and the aggressiveness of Russia. Russia has decided that it's all in Syria, and they've also decided who they want to see become president of the United States, too, and it's not me. I've stood up to Russia. I've taken on Putin and others, and I would do that as president. I think wherever we can cooperate with Russia, that's fine. And I did as Secretary of State. That's how we got a treaty reducing nuclear weapons. It's how we got the sanctions on Iran that put a lid on the Iranian nuclear program without firing a single shot.
Thank you, Secretary Clinton.
First of all,
Mr.
she
Trump.
was there as Secretary of State with the so-called line in the sand, which...
No, I wasn't. I was gone. I hate to interrupt you,
but you were in contact. Excuse me.
At some point, we need to
you
do
were in
some
total
fact-checking
contact
here.
with the White House.
Trump,
so
Mr.
what's
Trump,
the
your
purpose?
2
And
minutes
one thing
is
I have
up.
to say,
Your 2
I
minutes
don't
is
like
up.
Assad at all, but Assad is killing ISIS. Russia is killing ISIS, and Iran is killing ISIS. And those three have now lined up because of our weak foreign policy.
Mr. Trump, let me repeat the question. If you were president, what would you do about Syria and the humanitarian crisis in Aleppo? And I want to remind you what your running mate said. He said provocations by Russia need to be met with American strength, and that if Russia continues to be involved in airstrikes along with the Syrian government forces of Assad, the United States of America should be prepared to use military force to strike the military targets of the Assad regime.
Okay. He and I haven't spoken, and I disagree. I disagree.
You disagree with your running
I think we have
mate.
to knock out ISIS. How stupid is our country?
There are sometimes reasons the military does that. Psychological
I can't
warfare.
think of any. I can't think of any.
It
and I'm
might
pretty
be
good
to
at it.
help
We have
get
General
civilians
Flynn.
out.
They should have the equipment they need so that Kurdish and Arab fighters on the ground are the principal way that we take Raqqa after pushing ISIS out of Iraq.
Thank you very much. We're going to
You know,
move
it's
on.
funny. She went over a minute over, and you don't stop her. When I go 1 second over, it's like
You
a
had
big deal.
many answers.
It's really very
We've got a
interesting.
question over here.